In 1981, author Alice Sebold was raped. A year later, in 1982, a man, Anthony Broadwater, was convicted of that assault. Alice Sebold later wrote a memoir about her experiences during her assault and during the subsequent trial, Lucky, which published in 1999 and went on to sell over 1 million copies. It was picked up in 2019 to be adapted to the big screen. However, an executive producer attached to the project, Tim Mucciante, noticed discrepancies between the manuscript he was seeing during the process and the original memoir. This led him to investigate a bit further, and what he uncovered led to the exoneration of Anthony Broadwater. To many, this seems an impossibility. To others, an all too common narrative in American history. But what happened here to have this innocent man's life completely overturned by the legal system? And how did author Alice Sebold react to realizing that she was a part of convicting an innocent man? I'm gonna hint, it's she didn't do great. Quick note here, the accusations against Broadwater being proven to be specifically false do not mean that we are, or just in general, I'm going to allow any suspicion of her testimony at all, or to entertain any thought that she's making up her story about being assaulted. We're just not going to go there. Unless new information comes up that says she was completely making literally everything up, we're just going to go forward on the assumption that all the facts regarding her assault are true, and everything that happened after that in terms of identification and the legal system, that's where things went wrong. All right? So let's begin where Anthony Broadwater enters the story. Alice Sebold writes that 5 months after her assault, she's walking around on her college campus in Syracuse, and she sees a black man, walking towards her, and he calls out to her in what she terms an overly familial manner, which implies that he knows her from somewhere before. So he says, "Hey girl, don't I know you from somewhere?" She writes in Lucky, she recognizes him instantly. "I looked directly at him, knew his face had been the face over me in the tunnel." That's where she was assaulted. Sebold then runs to the police, who arrive on the scene, but a little later, and there's no one there who matches the description. So they ask around, and they do find out the identity of a man who had been on the scene a little earlier. That man is Anthony Broadwater. Broadwater, then 20, and recently returned from a stint in the Marine Corps in California to be with his father, who had recently been diagnosed as very ill and ailing and dying, pretty much, is brought in to a police lineup. Sebold looks at the lineup, looks at these 5 men, and identifies a different man. She describes her process and why she chooses this man out of the lineup, and says that his expression told her that if we were alone, if there were no wall between us, he would call me by my name and then kill me. We have a picture here. Police later state that the second man, the one identified by Sebold, was an acquaintance of Broadwater's, and they think, like their theory, is that he snuck his way onto the police lineup so that and distracted Sebold with like a very intense gaze so that she wouldn't identify Broadwater. That's how they work around that. Sebold herself says that the reason she mixed up the two is because they look near identical. Which, like, they don't, but sure, Alice, whatever helps you sleep at night. Because of this eyewitness testimony, Broadwater is charged despite maintaining his innocence, something which he holds to for the entire process, even though taking the sentence would have meant he had less jail time. And Sebold goes into trial prep, basically. During this trial prep, she does describe being coached by her lawyers and the cops that she needs to identify him, that she was right, things like that. Basically, though she says she does have doubts, they are kind of ironed out by the prosecution and by the police. They're all like, no, you got the right man. It's definitely him. So by the time she gets to the stand, she has no doubt that Broadwater is the man who raped her. At the trial, it is indeed her eyewitness testimony. She stands on in the interrogation box. That's probably not the word. Well, she gives eyewitness testimony. She points him out in court, says that that is the man who raped her. And then there's also another piece of evidence that is used. It's basically the other thing that the trial hinges on, and it's hair analysis. Now, hair analysis is a junk science, and it hasn't been used in cases post the 2000s about because it is unreliable and it's very faulty. A lot of cases have been, like, there's been identifications on specific people who've it's later turned out to be dog hairs, things like that. It's just not, and it's not the DNA analysis of when you have the little bit of skin attached to the end of the hair follicle. It's literally just looking at a hair and being like, it looks like his hair. Hair analysis, just not good science. So really, it's Sebold's testimony that put him away. And had he only been convicted on the hair analysis, I think the conviction would have been overturned in the early 2000s when this was proven to be like a bad science, you know. Broadwater is then sent to prison for 16 years. He does get out in 1999, the same year that Sebold publishes Lucky, and he is registered into the sex offender registry, which means that he has a very difficult time getting a job. He has a very hard time finding housing because everywhere he needs to tell them that he is both a convicted felon and a registered sex offender. This also means that people don't really want to hang out with him. They don't want to affiliate themselves with him. They don't want him coming to their house because they might have children and they're, you know, afraid, which, like, understandable. He maintains his innocence the entire time. He does, it's a pretty sweet story, find a woman he goes out with who, like, first few dates, he explains to her the situation, he gives her all the trial stuff, says he's innocent. She takes, like, a night, he sleeps on the couch and she takes a night in the bedroom and reads through all of it, comes out, is like, I believe you, you didn't do this. And they do eventually get married, but he holds off, despite the fact that he wants them, he holds off on having children because he doesn't want his status as a sex offender to ruin their lives, basically. He doesn't want that to follow them. He doesn't want that stigma on them. So despite the fact that he wants children, he doesn't have them, and he has a very difficult life, honestly, after being let out. And something else, after he's released, he appeals his conviction multiple times. I think at least 5 times. But there is a limit to how many times you can appeal a conviction. I firmly do believe that had Tim Mucciante not stuck his nose in, thank you for being nosy, we love that, he would have used up all of his appeals and he would have died, and this would never have been found out or overturned. So it's on November 24th, 2021, that Broadwater is officially exonerated of all charges relating to the assault. Said DA William Fitzpatrick about the charges, "I'm not going to sully this proceeding by saying I'm sorry. That doesn't cut it. This should never have happened." Broadwater, now 61, said of his exoneration, "I've been crying tears of joy and relief the last couple of days. I'm so elated, the cold can't even keep me cold." But where was Sebold? In the days following Broadwater's exoneration, Sebold was radio silent. A lot of journalists and newspapers were reaching out to her through both her publisher and her agent, but they all said no comment. The only comment Scribner, her publisher, released was that there were no plans at the moment for a revisit or revamp of her of Lucky. It took over a week, 8 days later, for Sebold to publish an apology in Medium, and to be honest, it made the whole situation worse. So first, you have the fact that her statement took so long is just not a good look. It's not likely that Sebold and her team were hearing about this for the first time, considering Broadwater's been applying for appeals so often. They must have had a heads up that this was going to happen. The fact that Mucciante dropped out of the project in June, I think, of this year, should have raised red flags that something was happening. And, you know, it's just, they didn't hear about it the same time that most people heard about it. That's all I can say about that. The fact, too, that her announcement came out at the exact same time as Scribner made a statement about revisiting the manuscript and maybe adding a chapter or two to future editions of Lucky left a bad taste in people's mouth. It really does seem like behind the scenes it was just her and a publisher and maybe like a couple lawyers talking about what the ramifications would be for the book, and not Sebold processing what was happening. Like, it had legal stink all over it, which doesn't help in an apology. To that point, in Sebold's apology, she never actually apologizes for her role in his conviction. While she does say she is sorry, she apologizes mostly for what was done to him by the legal system and by police, and never directly apologizes for her actions. While this could be because she legitimately doesn't see herself as guilty, it also kind of more seems like something as a legal protection, where if you apologize, that can sometimes be taken in a court of law as you taking responsibility and admitting guilt. Now, there are such a thing as apology laws, which do cover apologizing, so that in case, usually medical or legal cases, a doctor can say, I apologize for what happened to someone, and not be legally liable for that action. However, it is important to note that there are no such apology laws in New York State where this occurred, so that's just an interesting tidbit. On top of that, the most egregious part for many people was the part of Sebold's statement where she says, "Today, American society is starting to acknowledge and address systemic issues in our judicial system that too often means that justice for some come at the expense of others. Unfortunately, this was not a debate or even a conversation or even a whisper when I reported my rape in 1981. Which is not a great statement. Not only does it kind of reek of it was a different time, who isn't a little racist in the 80s, but it's also blatantly untrue. So Sebold writes in Lucky that she realizes that her defense, when she finds out that she misidentified Broadwater, she says that the defense would be that a panicked white girl saw a black man on the street. He spoke familiarly to her, and in her mind she connected this to a rape. She was accusing the wrong man. Which is literally what happened. And it's not great. It also implies that Sebold is aware of the racial dynamics of her accusation, and that she was held in a position of power over Broadwater. I want to talk about the history of accusations of rape by white women against black men, or just generally that dynamic in terms of sexual assault. The United States has an obsession with the rape of white women, specifically by non-white men. Historically, these were the only kind of convictions that were held legally liable that had any sort of repercussions, usually lynchings, and that is because not only was pre-1861, I want to say, rape could only happen to white women. Legally, black women and other non-white women could not be raped legally. The threat of rape of the white woman was also a huge linchpin when arguing against anti-lynching laws. Senators would use the rape of the white woman and the miscegenation of the white race as kind of this thing in the back of your mind of like, well, if we get rid of lynching, everyone's going to just start raping. Accusations of sexual assault by black women against white women were also used as excuses for extreme acts of racial violence against black people as a whole. Accusations of sexual assault against white women were used as inciting incidents in the Tulsa Race Riot of 1921, the Rosewood Massacre of 1923, the execution of 3 of the Groveland Four in 1949, and the murder and torture of Emmett Till in 1955, along with countless others who were tortured, murdered, or imprisoned for crimes they didn't commit. So at the end of the day, while Sebold was also a victim in this situation, she used her social power as a white woman to achieve a sense of finality and justice that came at the hands of a black man, at the expense of a black man's life. That is a sense of justice that many people do not get to have in this country. That is a sense of closure that many families of missing and murdered Indigenous women, of black men executed by the police, do not get to get. And the fact that she doesn't understand that her place in this system is not one that she can kind of just sorry her way out of. Her passiveness and acceptance of that's just the way it is means she's complicit. And that is something that she can never repay. Still, while Broadwater has accepted her apology far more graciously than I think anyone expected or, needed him to, I think he can be allowed to be as angry as he wants, honestly. What Sebold needs to do is, one, talk to him, like actually talk to him, not just release a statement, talk to him, apologize to him directly, and also offer some sort of reparations, because she profited off of what was done to him tenfold. That is the launching point. Lucky is the launching point of her career as an author. She went on to publish Slowly Bones, which went on to be adapted into a movie. Lucky, I know the project got discontinued, but I'm sure she has money from that film adaptation as well. She needs to talk to him and make some sort of overture. As it is, she just seems like she's covering her own ass and protecting her own assets, and that is disgusting. I'd like to end with a quote from The Blood of Emmett Till by Timothy Tyson, in which he interviewed Carolyn Bryant, the woman who accused then 14-year-old Emmett Till of making sexual overtures towards her. These are overtures that then led to her husband and his brother torturing and murdering Till. Of Till accosting her, Bryant said, "That is not true. You tell these stories for so long that they seem true, but that part is not true. Nothing that boy did could have justified what happened to him." A quick thank you to everybody for watching, for making it this far. And I want to say that I'll be putting a link to the resources used below. And I'm sorry for starting off on such a fucking downer note, but this was something I've been very mad about, so I needed to get it off my chest. Hopefully the next one will be something lighter. We'll see. All right, thanks for listening. Bye.